Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Thank you all for your patience. We're just 2 minutes late. We ran long on the first round, and so we're assembling a little slowly. Thank you all, and thank you all. Thank you all. Welcome to this November 25th Public Forum and City Council meeting. And as usual, we will open this with a public forum, and looks like we have 33 people who have signed up. And I'll read the rules in a minute, but I just want to mention that, remind people I realized in our last public forum that it got a little, just a tad unruly, not bad, but just a little bit. And I think the fault was partly mine. I didn't really remind everybody of the rules, and there were some new folks in the room. So I'm going to do better this time and just remind you of the rules, which is that we have one essential rule here, which is that the audience is quiet. That's the essential rule. That's all you really have to remember about being in the audience, is to be quiet. And we want to be able to hear people who are speaking, and we want people who are speaking to be able to feel safe. And so we don't want anyone to feel that, someone's going to either say yay or boo, that you're respectful of one another as you are sitting side by side in the audience and as you are presenting. So I just thank you for that. It makes it a more constructive and positive experience for everyone if we respect one another's minimal time to speak. So now I'll read the rules. The public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. I will call 2 names at a time. The first name can come directly to the podium to speak. The second person can sit in the warm-up chair so that we can move through the speakers very efficiently. So thank you so much. First up is Joshua Korn, followed by Rebecca McCroskey. Oh, we have 34, it looks like.
Joshua Korn, Betty's ward, and I am going to read, this is, by the way, non-transmitting airplane mode. I'm going to read the beginning of a letter, and I will mail the full letter to the council for your research. And to everyone here that's speaking out against climate and environmental stuff, take note of this, because this is really important for the climate. This is affecting the climate, whether you realize it or not. Notice to cease and desist from processing and approving applications for permits for all 4G and 5G close proximity microwave radiation antenna wireless telecommunication facilities not compliant with National Environmental Policy Act NEPA requirements. Dear City Council and Mayor, regarding Federal Communications Commission FCC Order 18-30, please note that the ruling of August 9th, 2019, case 18-1129 in the DC Circuit Court of Appeals renders all close proximity microwave radiation antenna wireless telecommunication facility applications incomplete because the applications lack a federal environmental assessment and environmental impact statement as required under the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969. NEPA case 18-1129, page 7 states, quote, Congress enacted NEPA to encourage productive and enjoyable harmony between man and his environment and promote efforts which will prevent or eliminate damage to the environment and biosphere and stimulate the health and welfare of man, among other purposes, end quote. Title 42 USC Section 4321. This 8919 ruling pertains to the class of CPMRA-WTF, also known as small wireless facilities, that are comprised of the antennas, radios, and power equipment that often attached to utility poles, light poles, and other structures and objects. Any CPMRA WTFs planned for the City of Eugene, County of Lane, are part of a large federal undertaking, around 800,000 installations that use transmission frequencies licensed from the FCC, as described in FCC Order 18-30. Case 18-1129, page 19, states when referencing accelerated wireless broadband deployment by removing barriers to infrastructure.
Thank you.
Investment, second order.
Thank you. Rebecca McCroskey, followed by Mike McFarland.
Okay, I'm Rebecca McCroskey. I'm in the Eugene Ward 5. I'm a volunteer with the River Guardians and the Willamette Riverkeeper. As a river guardian, I have firsthand knowledge of the effects of non-recreational camping along the banks of the Willamette River, and I speak to that today. Before I retired to Eugene in February of 2018, I had never been here. The first thing I noticed was the beauty of this valley, how different it was from my home state of Michigan, and quite literally, the second thing I noticed was the shocking, pervasive homelessness and litter. When I volunteered with the Riverkeepers, I figured, what a great way to get out on the river without having to buy a boat, plus fresh air, plus doing good. Well, it still is fun on the river, and I don't even mind the fact that this is backbreaking, filthy work. What I mind is the utter futility of it all. The Riverkeepers venture out every month, all year long, into the cold Willamette to collect water-soaked, half-buried mattresses, furniture, needles, bicycle and car parts, and most of all, yard upon yard of unspeakable refuse that can only be generated by humans. Only a handful of these campsites, these are waste dumps, these are chop shops, these are drug dens, and it all washes into the river. We fill hundreds of bags month after month, year after year, only to discover that we have not made a dent. Not one less yard of garbage ever. It's like we had never been there. And these sites threaten the fragile ecosystem that is the river itself. Endangered mussels and fish and mammals and plant life all are affected by this lack of respect for the creatures that share our natural world. During my short time in Eugene, I have attended several events regarding our homeless problem. I have heard the tragic stories of the unhoused, the advocates in the trenches pleading for more funding, the frustration of law enforcement. And nobody needs to tell me how unaffordable the housing is here. I don't pretend to know the answers. I know you folks are working hard. The homeless need a place to be, and we all need more compassion in our lives. But quite frankly, the River Guardians are suffering from compassion fatigue. We are just one small group among countless others who have been giving our time and our sweat to keep the Willamette healthy and accessible to all. Until you can provide habitat-friendly campsites with bathrooms, with oversight, with maintenance, you cannot continue to let riverfront camping happen. It just isn't working. Please keep trying. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike McFarland, followed by Jarl Berg.
Sure. My name is Mike McFarland. I live in Eugene, and I'm here also as a riverkeeper. I don't know if you remember me last meeting, but I came with an open heart to all you folks. And I invited you all to come out on the river. And when you see the picture going through the, your hands, we'll talk about that in a minute. But nobody came, and that wasn't a big surprise. It's not for everybody. It's difficult out there. It's hard. It's cold. It's wet, and there's a lot of things that are wrecking our number one resource. You probably all have the picture now. What I would like you to do is look at the boats in the foreground. The trash, the pile of trash that are on those boats represent not the first cleanup, but the second emergency cleanup that we had to do this month. So in other words, we went out and we collected 11 yards of trash, which is about as big as your board here, about that tall. And then we didn't get it all. We almost didn't get half of it. So we all had to take off work. We all had to do whatever we had to do, but we were not going to let that last little bit of 7 yards of trash head towards Albany, Corvallis, and Salem. The next high water event, it all would have been gone. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you about garbage farming like I did last time and all the things we're seeing out there. What I'd like to do is to suggest that we sit down and really start talking about solutions. We're not going to cure homeless tomorrow. We're not going to. This is a big, complicated issue. I acknowledge that. But this is just us standing in the middle of whatever comes towards the river, and we have to make a solid line. So look for a call from us, look for an email. We want to sit down and we want to figure out how we can work together to stop this losing battle we're having. And I'm really looking up to you folks right now as people who really do want a solution. I think we all do, but we have to do more, and we really, really have to put some strong minds together. Thank you for listening. We're going to come each month now. We're going to give you reports how much we pulled out of our river, but know that we want that private conversation. We want to fix this, and I thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Jarl Berg, followed by David Ivan Piccioni.
Hello, everyone. So last time I was here, we had a little chat about who was supposed to be doing what and whatnot. And this time, I'm here to bring some ideas. So the great thing is we've got a great group here, people who actually want to work together and fix a problem. The best part is it's not actually your job to fix this. It really isn't. There's a group that has been around for about 2,000 years, and they are actually charged to fix this homeless problem. And if you fix the homeless problem, you can fix the lawless problem, because we need to get the homeless, people who want to have a home, off the streets and in a home. They want jobs, they want a home, they want security that most of us take for granted. They want that. So how do we first get that to them first? And then once that's taken care of, then we can address the other issues that are going on. So let's first talk to the churches. Sit down and say, you guys were actually charged with this about 2,000 years ago to help the homeless, feed the people that need to be fed, clothe them, give them homes, give them a place to rest and feel safe like we all do in our homes. That is their job. That is what they're there for. I know that we don't want to get into a religious this, that, and the other thing. It's not about that. This is what they're supposed to do. From Jesus' own words, this is what they're there for. So that's what they need to do. You need to hold them accountable to what they are supposed to be doing. I know it's not going to make a lot of friends. It's not going to be overly exciting at first, but in the end, it is their job. So it is their job to take care of this. And just so you know my background, I went to Bible college. I was a youth pastor for 7 years. I have a little bit of experience in this. So I've read the Bible a few times. My grandfather was a pastor. They were missionaries. I've been on a few missions myself. So I'm not being a jerk towards the church. It's just the reality is this is what they're there for as a whole. And we have a lot of churches here in this town that are empty 5 days a week, even 6 days a week. So they have plenty of opportunity for warming centers, for inexpensive child care for people who were trying to work but maybe can't because they can't afford child care. Well, they've got all these rooms that are empty every day. What do you do with those rooms? Work with those people, work with the churches and the church leaders and go, how can we fix this? You have the resources, you have the buildings, and they're heated. They're going to pay for the heat anyways. Why not have a warming center? Why not have a child care? Why not have maybe a place for them to sleep when it's the coldest nights and have the burden be shared by a lot of churches instead of one or two? And then you've got a lot of issues fixed just in that alone. Take care of that, then you can start thinking about the lawless and go, okay, all these people that are still on the streets by choice and causing problems in Eugene, how do we fix that? And that's the tough one. I get it. It's tough. But start with round one of helping the people who want help and then go from there. Make sense? Let's rock and roll. Let's make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. David Ivan Piccioni, followed by Tom Dunn.
Hello. I want to relate a story that's really happened to me. I was living in a house, and in between my house and the other house, there was this big tree. It had a big bottom, like a big butt, and it went up. And it kind of lifted the sidewalk, and it made it hard for people on wheelchairs and stuff. So I went there and said, "Hey, you're cutting down this tree, man." Yeah, it's my job, you know. And like, don't you know that trees give you air? You know, they're beautiful. They clean up the smoke and just anything I could think of to tell them good things about the trees. So I didn't think about it anymore. The tree got cut, and a few years later, I was coming out of the Kiva. And that guy, who I didn't even recognize, he said, "You know, what you said changed me so much. I agree with you, and what I'm doing now is I'm still working with trees, but I don't cut them anymore. I just trim them." And I think that if we could give the people that are doing the job with the sidewalks an incentive to kind of make it flat, but not cut the tree, that would be very useful. I like to breathe air. The thing that I talk about a lot is population, and there is a problem that my dad brought to me before he died. But it was that if you want to cut down the population, you can't do it too fast, because when people are getting older, they're going to need young people to take care of them. So you can't just stop growth altogether. It has to be very gradual and very precise. I like the thing about the styrofoam, banning styrofoam containers. I think people should be able to carry their eating paraphernalia, put it in a bag after they've eaten, and go home and wash it if they have a home. I think it's a little hypocritical that in this state we have permission to commit suicide, but we do not have permission to take all the drugs that we want and live, you know, however long you're going to live. But I mean, you can kill yourself, which is worse. I mean, I don't know. But and the police that was here, I thought it was interesting. I think that the cops unfortunately look at small-time criminals, street criminals, what the officer called them. They should focus on corporate crime.
Thank you. Tom Dunn, followed by David Eigel.
I'd like to address the council. I appreciate you having these short meetings, awful short. About 3 years ago, I came to a meeting, and my biggest concern was lack of, presentation of the county or the city website. And I still remember Councilor Evans. I must have been saying something right because he kept nodding like mad. But I was pointing out that there was, as far as interest and information for people, but the only thing listed was a past parade of in the Bethel district. Right now, the compliment is we have a ton of information on your website. Tremendous improvement. Whereas lacking is being able to pull out information out of that site. Example, well, so I want to talk about communication. That's part of the internet, but also throw some thanks out. I didn't say that. Jefferson West Side neighborhood, Eugene resident. I want to thank Mayor Venice. You came to one of our meetings, addressed this. Appreciate it. Good. You made yourself vulnerable. My counselor, Emily Semple, she came too and went. Great. We got started. As far as, let me jump in real quick and the letter. When I searched on your search engine, first page, it's got 3 big pictures of things that I kind of call them feel-good things. It's okay to have them, and they're fine. a big picture of a Thanksgiving event, Martin Luther King leadership, and a call to artists. I would suggest if we're interested really in CAP 2.0, that we have something on that front page, and we have some hot links that go directly to the presentations that are made and directly to your contractor. On the first opening page, there's a search engine up there. I put CAP 2.0. Nothing came up except past events. Mayor Venice, I think her first one, she had something from November 7th, 2019. Good, came up. A lot of positives, and I like positives, and you covered a lot of things. Reduce our fossil fuel by 50% in 2030. Important one, city learns or leads by example. Effective clean transportation. So let me take off on that one for a second. The city needs to do some of the things that we would like everybody to do. You have the power to control your motor pool. We have this was from your contractor, 450 vehicles.
Thank you.
Is that the total in? I thought I got a warning.
That's your 3 minutes,
Okay.
sorry. But you can submit things in writing if you want, so.
I will, and
Thank
you'll
you.
see me next in 2
Thank you.
weeks.
Excellent. David Eigel, followed by Linda Kelly.
David Eigel. I think you know I'm in District 1, and I'm back here for my usual reason. Mr. Evans, through his service on the renaming committee, has brought in the imprimatur of the City Council on the scandalous denaming of Dunn Hall. Now, I've been showing up recently in City Hall, and I haven't been showing up for a long time before that. And I don't expect any of you to remember when I was here 50 years ago. I think we can agree on that. The reason I was here 50 years ago was because this community was involved in passing anti-discrimination ordinances in housing, and I was here to support them. This is not a community of hate. I think a lot of the people in this room and on this council represent that. I think Mr. Evans basically represents that in his own way, even though I haven't, quote, issue. But the reason I'm coming here is I just simply have asked you to tell the truth. If you don't want to study something, I think that's fine. I know you've got a lot to deal with. I don't begrudge you that. But if you're going to deal with something, it needs to be dealt with. Now, I urge you to either appoint a committee and get people to look at something, or don't look at it, but say, look, simply issue a statement that says, we didn't study this. Mr. Evans' service was simply to say something nice about someone. I think it's great that he picked Mr. Unthink. I commend you for that. I think Mr. Unthink does deserve a pat on the back, but this isn't the right way to do it if you're going to, embarrass this man by tying him in with a false story about Professor Dunn. I've got a 53-page blog, and I've got more beyond that. It's fraud. It isn't just bad history. They lied. They lied about not just this man, but about the whole state of Oregon. It was a fraternal order. It was sold by crooks. You can read books about it. I have books. I'll give citation to anyone want. You don't have to go through my material. You don't have to go through there isn't any issue here. They said that Dunn was in charge of the Klan. They cited to Peculiar Paradise. That's their proof. The book doesn't support that. It doesn't even mention Dunn. It's absolute nonsense. They said these people were murderers and terrorists, the fraternal order. That's in direct contradiction to the major scholarship, and the field will tell you the opposite. The murder example they used on the coast doesn't support that. There wasn't even suspicion. They just made this up. There was a real murder, but it had nothing to do with the fraternal order of the Klan. I ask you to take action at last. Please protect our reputation in this community.
Thank you. Linda Kelly, followed by Linda Perrine.
Good evening. I'm in Emily Semple's Ward 1. And just a few thoughts. So we know the whole CAP 2 is a huge challenge, and there's so many suggestions and places to start, and, you know, where do you begin, right? Especially on a community level. So 2 things recently came to my attention. One was I attended this Food Waste Stops With Me workshop for restaurant owners, kitchen managers, the DEQ. I helped them do a little bit of outreach. They asked $350 to do that. Went to the workshop. Very interesting because it was, you know, the participants were all people who actually worked in the business. One of the things that did come up during that was how people felt about takeout containers and that it was really discouraging, et cetera, et cetera. An idea did come up to have sort of researched among restaurant owners some sort of a takeout container that was standardized throughout all participating restaurants and even potentially through the city that you could then take home and maybe either for a deposit or something to be discussed and then bring it back the next time you came. The restaurant would wash it out. The idea could also be similar to the food not waste sort of idea, could be educational. So we all know that we waste, 33 to 40% of the food in this country, and also it's the number 3 out of 100 thing that we can do to keep methane out of the air and deal with the climate. So it's very doable. It shouldn't be expensive. And if it was branded correctly, it could be educational at the same time. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a thought about some place to actually start with community actions that is fairly straightforward. The other piece is I was having a conversation with Ralph McDonald the other day, and we were talking about the composting program and how it would be a really, I think, important idea to spend some money, however that would work, to actually get labeling on the containers like they are on the recycling containers so that people understand what can go in, what can't go in. There's still people who aren't aware that they can put food waste in with the, I rode up with 2 people who were unaware that they could actually do food waste. So I think if labeling was on all of those containers with, you know, pictures, it might really help people get on board and shouldn't be too complicated to do. So 2 suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Perrine, followed by Debbie McGee.
Good evening. I'm Linda Perrine from Southeast Eugene. You have heard 350 Eugene call the Climate Action Plan 2.0 a plan to fail. I hope to give you a little more background on why we're saying that. We do see it as either incomplete or negligent if it's approved in its current state. The major omission, a major glaring hole in it is that it is lacking any way to measure whether we're going to achieve the climate recovery ordinance. We need a way to annually monitor the gas carbon emissions and figure out if we're on our 7.6% decline targets and whether we're on the plan to hit 2030's goals. There's no measurable objectives in the CAP. We gave some examples in some of the information we've given to the city staff, but a few examples here are reduce the total energy use of all buildings built before 2010 by 25%, achieve net zero carbon emissions in all new buildings and homes, supply 50% of all energy used in buildings from renewable resources with 10% from on-site renewables like solar. There's also serious emissions. There is no adoption of the GAP strategies for sector or consumption gaps to the CRO. There's no plan for adding to the Northwest Natural Franchise Agreement to phase gas out, which is what we hope you all are still going to do here in the next 6 months. Emissions from business and industry supply chains are not addressed. Stationary and transportation refrigerant loss is not addressed. Upfront emissions related to consumption of food, clothing, and other goods are not addressed. There's serious holes in the current climate action plan. On another note, I want to actually thank Mike Clark for dreaming up the idea of a website the other day at the CAP review to do help residents and hopefully eventually businesses take a look at their own carbon emissions and learn of ways that they can improve on that. There's a project that I manage on behalf of 350 Eugene. The city of Eugene and eWeb have all contributed. It's called the Eugene Carbon Free Challenge. I gave little green sheets here to Sarah to pass out to all of you so that you can take a look at it. And I would really appreciate the opportunity at whatever is convenient to present it to the council. I've been all over town to all the neighborhood associations, to the churches, to the schools. We have been doing presentations for 6 months, and we've achieved 275 homes participating and 132% or 132 tons of carbon reduced so far in really the 5 months I've been doing this. So there is progress. I'd love to tell you more about it, but tonight's not the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie McGee, followed by Thomas Hiura.
Good evening. My name is Debbie McGee. I've lived about 10 miles outside Eugene for the last 35 years. I attended the Northwest Natural Franchise Agreement work session, and now I understand that there are negotiations occurring regarding the contract. And I'm wondering if Councillor Taylor's question from that work session about council's ability to prohibit more gas infrastructure in our community has been answered by staff. I believe that Ethan Nelson said he would look into that. I'm wondering if the possible prohibition was discussed or will be discussed before these negotiations are complete. Prohibiting more gas expansion would help stop the greenhouse gas emissions from going up and moving us closer to not failing to meet actual goals in the CAP 2.0. I know that council is concerned about disrupting the lives of citizens, and it seems to me that prohibiting gas that is not yet installed is not disruptive. We can take that action that moves us toward a safer future. Other cities are prohibiting gas expansion because they too have climate goals that must be met. Berkeley has prohibited gas expansion, and here in Oregon on December 18th, Portland City Council will deliberate and vote on this issue. Prohibiting gas expansion is low-hanging fruit. Council can regulate natural gas in new construction via the Northwest Natural franchise negotiation. Council can prohibit Northwest Natural from promoting fuel switching to gas. Council can adopt a policy that all new city buildings or city-funded buildings operate on 100% renewable energy, just to mention a few actions. Last week on the news, I heard that we had just experienced the second hottest October in recorded history, and that we had warmed by 1.5 degrees. We are 7 inches below normal rainfall, and we are predicted to have no snowpack in the Oregon Mountains in 18 years. Either we implement actions that accomplish the greenhouse gas emission goals, or we do not. Either we keep our commitments by meeting the climate recovery ordinance goals, or we don't. Either we stop burning fossil fuels to create a livable future for all children, or we don't. We must adopt all of the GAP strategies in this CAP 2.0. I hope we do. Please prohibit more methane expansion in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Hiura, followed by Betsy Hitz.
For my YouTube. It's 6 p.m. I don't know what to tell the city council in just 3 minutes, but it would be fun to write a poem about how everyone deserves love and respect. There's a timber magnate who's gotten me into the Founders Club at Duck basketball games. Right behind the press table, free onion rings. That dude deserves love and respect. There's an Asian man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. Yo, NBC, that guy's movement deserves love and respect. There's a nerdy Asian kid who turned 26 yesterday and is unsure if they get to call themselves a kid anymore. They're writing 64 policy goals that they think the city of Eugene and its generally excellent city councilors could accomplish by 2024. That person deserves love and respect. There are many public commenters who would feel more safe if, while they face this dais of power, their peers in the audience were allowed to audibly applaud. Love and respect to them. There's a mayor whose priorities and approach I disagree with, but whose character I still find admirable. She deserves love and respect. There's a 2016 mayoral candidate who tweeted a bunch that I was a, quote, faker and, quote, not a real hobo. He deserves love, and it's Streck. The best salsa in town is made by a business called Salsa Garcia. Love and respect. There are people fighting and challenging the left versus right narrative that bifurcates us. They're here protecting our river environment and seeking accountability for the subset of unhoused campers who leave gratuitous trash. Love and respect. There are progressive people who look at Eugene Wake Up and they view the group as being motivated by care for the community at large and not by, quote, fascism and white supremacy. Love and respect for those people. There's an Ivy League professor who was supposed to provide wisdom on social studies teaching. She had a 15-year history of bullying students, and she tried to fail me at Columbia after I reported a transphobic comment she made. Love and respect, and I hope she changes. There's a dude who spent 30 minutes in the single-unit bathroom at the Eugene Public Library this morning while a line formed. By the time he emerged, he was mad at us for rushing him. Love and respect, though. There are people watching this maybe who think, no, some people and views are so reprehensible that they don't deserve any respect. That viewer deserves and has my love and respect. There are people who think the structural inequities in Lane County will be solved with a re-emphasized commitment to kindness. They deserve love and respect, though I disagree. From the understaffed Eugene police officers to the homeless dog owners who do all the hard work of advocating in their own ways for those who need them, those people all deserve love and respect. There were over 500 people in Salem on Thursday, loudly demonstrating against the Jordan Cove pipeline project. I wish Governor Brown had given our planet some love and respect that day. There's a president who the current Senate will never impeach, and he's on his way to re-election if anyone's main strategy is to continue demonizing his supporters, denying them love and respect. There are progressives who have seen our community led for 15 years by people doing the easy work of labeling themselves progressive, and they wonder if the recent lack of major accomplishments means the city might be due for a different approach. They want unity, humanity, tough truths, and love and respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy Hitz, followed by Jim New.
Betsy Hitz in Ward 1. I appreciate the palate rinse, and now back to the climate channel. Eugene's proposed climate action plan currently fails to meet our climate recovery ordinance goals by a staggering 60%. This after 2 years and at a cost to taxpayers of $450,000. At last week's work session on the climate action plan, I heard councilors and the mayor voice questions and comments, many of which align with demands from 350 Eugene and allies. Councilors Surratt, Taylor, Evans, and Zelenka expressed interest in increased community input and innovation. Councilors Semple and Zelenka stated that we need big, bold changes, probably need to do all the additional actions as in the GAP strategy. Mayor Venice and Councilors Way and Zelenka inquired about the proposed timeline for various actions. And Councilors Evans, Surratt, and Zelenka asked for information about the cost and funding of possible actions. The task of creating a successful CAP, one that would get Eugene to 100% of our CRO goals, requires that the council and staff substantially improve the way in which they accomplish work. Council needs to study all information, ask hard questions, and give specific directions to staff. Staff needs to act swiftly to request for information and action directions from council and report to the community regarding proposed actions in progress in meeting the actions. For me personally, the glaring problems with the current CAP are, number one, lack of measurable objectives. A large-scale project must have objectives in order to measure progress. Interestingly, the 2010 CAP version had 33 objectives. Number two, omission of many sources of emissions, most especially upfront emissions related to consumption. This is food, clothing, other goods and services, which account for more than half of all emissions. And there is no mention of gas use in industry, which is the largest contributor by gas. Three, no mention of funding, no mention of budget considerations or staffing plans. And number four, no mention of a way to track emission reductions from the actions. No mention of reports to council, no mention of accountability and information to the community at large, another piece that got dropped from the original CAP project proposal. In closing, I encourage all community members to respond to the CAP survey found by Googling Engage Eugene. We're all in this together. Big, bold, fast action is needed to stabilize the climate for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim New, followed by Jacob Wood.
Mayor, Council, and City Manager, my name is Jim New. I live in Ward 7. Last month was a reoccurring nightmare for residents living in California due to wildfires accompanied with horrific winds. This is the third year in a row my daughter in Santa Rosa and her children have been affected by smoke and evacuations. PG&E has taken the brunt of the blame for either disrupting life through power outages or starting the fires. Had the same type of wind come over the Cascades, we could have experienced the same scenario, and EWEB could have received the blame. But are the power companies that take proactive measures, should they be the ones taking the blame? What about the carbon majors that knew 30 years ago, through their own studies, that the burning of fossil fuels increased CO2 levels in the atmosphere, which causes global warming and has led to drought, flooding, and more intense weather events worldwide? The federal government knew of their studies, which predicted CO2 levels at 415 parts per million by 2020. That is where we are today, and they predicted this over 30 years ago. So why do we not hold the fossil fuel industry responsible? Why is the public saddled with paying for the devastating events through their higher insurance premiums, relocation fees, death, health and safety expenses, and infrastructure rebuild costs? The County of Multnomah and the City of Portland are looking into holding them responsible by performing a risk analysis study to incorporate fossil fuel risk bonds into their climate action plan and their ordinance prohibiting fossil fuel infrastructure. These bonds would hold the fossil fuel industry liable for catastrophic events from infrastructure failure and costs of daily climate impacts on the health and safety of their residents. I sent all of you an article and link explaining these requirements and want to thank Betty Taylor, the one city councilor that acknowledged my email. I urge the council to request a work session on fossil fuel risk bond requirements so they may be considered as part of the Climate Action Plan 2.0 and the Northwest Gas Franchise Agreement. The Center for Sustainable Economy in Portland, the authors of the risk bond requirements, have agreed to do a presentation at your request. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacob Wood, followed by Sophia Reyes.
Hello, I'm Jacob Wood. I'm from Coburg. But hello, I'm from Osberg from Lane Community College, and I'm here to talk about our resolution that we passed through the student government at our school. I'm here to support a ban on polystyrene foam cups and takeout containers. And I'm originally from Nebraska, which is a very interesting place, especially Omaha, Nebraska. It's very flat. But their travel slogan is, "It's not for everyone." And I knew that when there was a warm summer day. I was in a place called Fontenelle Forest. It's alongside the Missouri River, and I was there with my family. I looked at the brown river as it was flowing, and I saw little flecks of white throughout it, early 2000s. And I tugged on my dad's sleeve and asked him, "What is that?" And he didn't answer with words at first. He looked around the bushes and some of the trees, and he eventually found a foam cup. It looked pretty new, only a few days old, but I have no idea how long it had actually been out there. And I moved here in 2014, and fast forward to last year, I was fishing with my friends, and I remember casting out and reeling in a little bit. I don't know why I reeled in. I'd never catch a fish. But I look over as my friend's phone lit up, and I not only noticed his phone, but under the bush is another foam cup. There's a huge issue with polystyrene. It never degrades, and is the worst of the worst. We have done a lot at LCC. A few weeks ago, we had our major petition blitz throughout the state. At Lane alone, we gathered over 620 petitions in just 3 days, and that was outstanding work. We did a lot. We went to our student government, and we had them agree unanimously to support our resolution that supports a ban on polystyrene products, single-use foam cups, and takeout containers. We urge you and beg you to support us in this ban against polystyrene products. Thank you.
Thank you. Sophia Reyes, followed by Abigail Keep.
Hi, Council. I'm Sophia Reyes. I'm in Alan Zelenka's ward over by Hayward Field, and I'm a grassroots intern for Osberg at Lane Community College and a concerned citizen of the Earth. I want to talk about a serious threat we face as Earth dwellers here in Eugene. Plastic has managed to infiltrate every aspect of the lives we live here on Earth. This was never as clear to me as it was when I first appointed a work study position in the Learning Garden at LCC. Fresh-faced and chipper, I was excited to have the opportunity to grow my own nutrient-dense organic foods that did not require the carbon emissions it typically takes for food to be transported to the grocery store or the malicious packaging that store-bought foods are wrapped in. And finally, I could rest assured knowing that the fuel I was feeding my temple was morally produced and not steeped in chemicals advocated for by the crooked special interests of the fuel and chemical industry. I'm sorry. If this is okay. All of these hopes remained high until the moment I came to begin plowing, preparing the soil for planting, and I noticed plastic pollution. After the first few times, I just quietly removed it, painfully aware of all the heavy effects that plastic pollution has on soil and therefore food. After a few more times, I went over to my garden mentor and I asked, "Why is there so much plastic?" "It's because it's ubiquitous," he said, "as in everywhere and in everything, even on this mountain, in this organic garden, in this corner of the forest that had given me the appearance of being safe." I try really hard to be a friend of the earth. I don't eat animals besides fish because I know how heavy the carbon footprint is in the animal agriculture industry. I don't drive anymore. When I did, I would get a sickly feeling every time it came to pay for more gas. I felt more resources being robbed from the land that we're made of and being sold to propagate more poisons on the earth, like the petroleum used to manufacture polystyrene. So anyways, there I am making every effort I can to avoid putting our shared living space of a planet at a disadvantage, and my food is still being steeped in plastic pollution. I know that ingesting plastic is very common in our society. As I know you've heard before, we each ingest about a credit card's worth of plastic every week. In the last week, humans face a myriad of health issues because of it, even cancer. But we are here to turn off the tap on plastic pollution. And actually, I wanted to tell you, Council, kudos on the plastic restrictions you've implemented so far. Now just seal the deal with this polystyrene ban, and it'll be one step closer to securing your status as environmental leaders. If we act locally, our impact can be felt globally. Thank you.
Thank you. Abigail Keep, followed by Teresa Parker.
Good evening. My name is Abigail Keep, and I live in Ward 1. I'm also a senior at the University of Oregon and the campaign coordinator for the Osberg Wildlife Over Waste campaign. We are in the middle of a crisis. You, the City Council, have the opportunity to be leaders in the fight against plastic pollution. Today, you will vote on a ban of single-use polystyrene takeout containers and cups in the city of Eugene. By passing this ban, you will set the example for the state of Oregon. The equivalent of a truckload of plastic enters the ocean every single minute. I have 3 minutes to make this speech. That means by the time I'm done, thousands of pounds of trash will have entered the ocean, where it will wash up inevitably on our coastline. Polystyrene, also known as styrofoam, makes up a significant portion of marine debris. Styrofoam crumbles easily, and when it ends up in the environment, small land and aquatic animals eat these pieces and die due to toxins and blockages in their stomachs. For the same reason, it is nearly impossible to clean up, and it will never biodegrade. So, in the meantime, it clogs up our environment, kills our wildlife, and poisons us. Proponents of the plastic industry, like Advocacy, who was here last week, want you to believe that we can recycle our way out of the problem, but this is impossible. Only 9% of plastic ever produced has been recycled. Up to 79% ends up in landfills or the environment. What's more, in Oregon, there is no widespread recycling program for polystyrene. It makes no sense to grab a mop when your bathtub is overflowing. First, you need to turn off the tap. But that is exactly what Agilix proposes we do. Grab a mop. If we ban polystyrene in Eugene, vendors will look for sustainable options. That means less plastic will be purchased and less will be thrown away. It will make a definitive difference. Polystyrene food containers have already been banned in New York City, Seattle, Washington, D.C., Maine, and Portland. We can do this. And I know that Eugene supports this measure. Osberg Students has collected over 1,300 petitions from students in favor of this ban. We have collected 50 small business sign-ons from business owners saying that a ban will not adversely affect their sales. We have also gained sign-ons from 35 professors, experts in chemistry, biology, marine science, and other professional fields, agreeing that plastic pollution is a major problem. And finally, last week, the Associated Students of the University of Oregon agreed to sponsor a resolution in favor of the ban. Please turn off the tap and ban single-use polystyrene takeout cups and containers in the city of Eugene.
Thank you. Teresa Parker, followed by Robin Bloomgarden.
I'm Teresa Parker. I live in Ward 1, Emily Simple's ward. Once again, thank you. Thank you for your patience and your time. Today, I'd like to actually turn around and thank all the people in the room that came here. Last week at the work session for the CAP 2.0, there was a mention about, wow, we really need to get people to hear and come and listen about this plan. It's like, I'd say people are coming. Your room is full. This community cares. And this isn't some kind of edgy group of folks that don't represent the mainstream. There are retired military, there's science teachers in the room, there are public servants, there are young students, there's a mix of people from your community that have been coming religiously to meetings because they care about things that matter to us and to our community. I want to support you in pursuing a strong CAP 2.0 with the suggestions that have already been made. I don't need to elaborate on that. One of the things that I experienced this week was a little bit of a parallel universe. I attended the LTD, Lane Transit District Board meeting where they were presenting their Transit Tomorrow plan for the first time. It's a pretty bold plan. It really makes a focus on ridership rather than coverage, which has a significant impact for reducing emissions by getting people out of their cars and into public transit, by increasing headways to 15 minutes in corridors. What that means, however, is that there are some communities or neighborhoods on the outskirts that are currently non-productive that will see a loss in service. And so I'm hoping, because those partners, including eWeb, Northwest, Natural, Lane Transit District, and others, are part of your being able to complete and do the plan, that you will support those partners in doing the right thing. I think Lane Transit District has a heavy lift, and I think it's up to the City Council and city staff to support them and recognize the link between CAP 2.0 and Transit Tomorrow's focus on getting people out of their cars and into public transit. So thank you once again for your time.
Thank you. Robin Bloomgarden. You're going to pass? Okay. Joe Tyndall, followed by Mark Howard.
Hi, Joe Tyndall. I'm in Jennifer's ward. I haven't spoken here for a while. My police commission experience left me angry. Yes, anger is the emotion humans feel when we witness or are subjected to injustice. Sadly, the insanity is accelerating. It comes from postmodernist echo chambers combined with the fact that extreme ideology generates more clicks. It's profitable. Tracing postmodernism back to Kant's critique of pure reason, Kant asserted that feelings are a better arbiter of truth than reason and our senses. If I feel something is true, then it is true. In Kant's case, if I feel God exists, then he does. Today's equivalent is that if I feel Trump is a Nazi, then orange mad bad. Reality is irrelevant. However, look at the polls. The Democrats' relentless anti-due process impeachment witch hunt has guaranteed Trump's reelection. The DNC is now nearly insolvent, while Trump has hundreds of millions in the bank from folks fed up with so-called social justice political correctness. That's objective reality. No amount of postmodernist doublespeak can change that. To buy into social justice, you must redefine words, deny history, ignore evidence, and disavow logical contradictions. For example, should biologically male trans women be crushing females in women's sports? David Eigel, the guy who objects to denaming Dunn Hall to placate the social justice mob, sends me his stuff to critique, including some emails with Councilwoman Ye that I found particularly troubling. A proper reading of objective physical reality shows that the denaming was based on bogus scholarship, a rewriting of history to virtual signal to social justice. Councilwoman, feeling that Dunn was a racist does not make him one. Examine the evidence. Ideologically based willful ignorance is not a virtue. Social justice is vicious and self-righteous. The parallels with the French Revolution are alarming. Recall that eventually even Robespierre was judged not pure enough and was killed at the guillotine. The Hidden Tribes report indicates social justice is 8% of America. It incubated for decades in universities and public schools, growing progressively more invasive and obnoxious. Yes, Jennifer, if you scapegoat, quote, white males, unquote, like Dunn, to pander to actual racists and sexists, the 92% will eventually sweep you from power. And happy Thanksgiving to all of you.
Thank you. Mark Howard, followed by Wayne Martin.
Hi, I'm Mark Howard from Ward 8. I've lived in Eugene a little over a year. I transferred from Southwestern Oregon Community College to University of Oregon, and I'm actually doing in reporting class, I'm doing a story about the homeless in Eugene, and through my research, I've just got kind of brokenhearted. So I was homeless. I lived out on the streets for years. Since my mom died and then my dad remarried when I was 13, I was off and on couch hopping. And then, and I had successes, through my life. But about 2010 or 11, I had a couple of strokes back to back, and it took me out of the game. I broke my leg really bad. And I ended up out and went through a divorce all at the same time. It was really bad. And I was out on the streets, and I got to tell you, it's not easy. It's not tough. And everybody out there isn't there because they choose to be or they made bad life decisions. A lot of it is structural, and everybody knows it. And it's something that people want to sweep under the rug or move down the road to somebody else's problem, and it's never gonna solve it. Neither is punitive. That's not going to help. It's not going to help. It's not going to solve the problem. Having that empathy from being there and having that perspective, I'm seeing a problem that is misunderstood. And my friend Wayne was telling me, he said, think of it like an emergency, like a flood. If there was a flood in this town and 2,600 people were lost their homes, you would claim a state of emergency and help them out. Well, it's cold out there. I met in my research, I met a couple of people, and they were standing out. They were sitting out on the curb waiting at the White Church, waiting for the Egan Warman Center buses to take them. And I talked to a couple of people. Sweet little lady, probably in her 70s, and another lady who they were both homeless, and they had been at the Hourglass the night before, and I was asking them questions, and they said, I was talking to Maddie, and she said that she just lost her apartment. She found out that she had cancer, and she was like, she was asking her friend, should I just die? You know, like just give it up? And I'm like, no, don't do that. These are people, they're people, they're grandparents, they're parents, they're children.
Thank you. Wayne Martin, followed by Drix.
Madam Mayor, Madam Manager, I want to lift up the remark about comparing this emergency to something like a flood. Floods have happened in Oregon. We should be able to relate. Again, if there were a flood, everything would go all out to solve that emergency. It would be a time of incredible creativity for you and for the staff. It's time to see that it isn't just a flood of water we're talking about, it's a flood of people. And these people are flooding other cities too. It doesn't make any sense for us to try to figure out where else they could be. They're there. And we really need to go to the drawing board and see what we can do in this emergency situation to designate safe places, not along the river, but anywhere else. A corner of one of our parks, a corner of a different park. We will find those safe places, and we will let 10 or so people be sheltered by their own tents and be paid, not all of them, but 2 out of 10, to run the camp and to see that there is safety and sanitation that can be utilized. Finally, there is a wonderful article. I urge you to see if you can Google and read it. It's called Houston, We Have a Solution. And it's an incredible story about what Houston did to solve their homeless problem, their emergency. The city of Houston has allocated monies which they didn't even want to acknowledge they had, because they were found in various funds that were somewhat set aside or obscure. I think we can do that too. We can really comb through our budget and see that there are many different funds that we are saving until they're needed. They're needed. I urge you to see this article, Houston, We Have a Solution, and check out Mark Eichenberg. You can Google him. He runs the very thing we're trying to have somebody in this city and in this county run. Thank you.
Thank you. Drix, followed by Terry Morgan.
It had to be you, Gene. I said I was going to say it, so I did. My name is Drix. I'm in Allen's ward. I love every one of you. I love you, Gene. I come here because, well, you know, if you don't come here, you don't really see what's going on. You don't feel part of your community. And so many people watch the telecast on their TVs at home, and it's just people coming and bitching and moaning. And we're more than that. So I come here to maybe smoke other people out, that you don't have to just complain to be here. I'm sure everyone's done their homework. I apologize. Last time I was here, I'm going to start talking faster, so I'm going to start talking faster. And I hope everyone did their homework. All right, move on. I promote, well, I'm eccentric. I realized that I'm not crazy when I turned 60. Yeah, a whole lifetime of thinking it. But I'm not. I'm brilliant. I'm genius. And I come in here and I just want to encourage our town. As the future is going to look different no matter what we do. So, where do I start this? You know, I keep thinking, I'll figure it out when I'm here. Well, here we are. Essentially, all of history, all of the wars, all the famine, all the travel, all the growth has led to you. And you, just the one you, that's us, Eugene. And so the future's going to look different. Please realize that you can never talk anybody into the fact that their thoughts and feelings are wrong. That just doesn't work. So we need to come up with new alternatives, new thoughts. And who better to do that than you, Gene? And I'm talking to everybody at home, all the way from little children who just mumble something that's brilliant, all the way to old folks like myself, who have a lot of knowledge and experience, and they can bring it into the effect. A friend of mine, I tell him how much fun I have coming here, and he just says, "Ooh, Grix, that's weird. What do you get paid for that?" Well, no, they're missing the boat. So, yes, so if I'm going to bring up higher concepts, and I'm going to bring gifts to people that you can put in your head and work with, and somehow the solutions will come out of our cooperation. And yeah, we send the Willamette to Portland, so don't forget that. They do. Okay, number one, does everybody know what the fourth dimension is? No. Well, you've got the first dimension, which is a spot in a place, a point. Second dimension is a line. Third dimension is all of us. And the fourth dimension is time. It's around us. Let's look at it different. It can be a lot of ways. For example, this room is going to be here next week. Well, let's think about it. All right, so let's plan for next week now. That's another level of consciousness about being here now. So let's get comfortable with it and teach the world. And then I want to end with, I don't know what I want to end with, but I sure have fun coming here, and I hope other people do too. We are a collection of wonderful. The whole world is watching us be wonderful, so let's have something wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I ramble? I did, didn't I?
Terry Morgan, followed by Jim Ball.
My name is Terry Morgan. I live in Springfield. Esteemed Mayor and City Council members, thank you again for your attention to the addiction crisis. As a representative of Oregon Recovers and a person in long-term recovery from drug addiction, I appreciate the fact that the resolution we presented to you is on the agenda for tonight. It is vital and imperative that we as a community recognize the impact that drug and alcohol addiction has on our neighborhoods, our places of business, our schools, our residents, and our morale. Over 2,100 Oregonians die each year due to drugs and alcohol. That is an average of 7 per day. I was here speaking at the session on November 12th, and since then, Oregon has likely seen 91 deaths related to drug and alcohol addiction. There is no greater definition of a crisis than this. Oregon has the 4th highest addiction rate in the nation and ranks 50th in access to treatment. As you may know, the governor recently announced that she was delaying addressing the addiction crisis, and there is no plan to address this in the upcoming short session. We strongly encourage you to send a copy of this resolution to the governor's office with a letter asking her to prioritize the addiction crisis. Our community needs help. Our community needs better access to treatment and recovery support services. Our community needs viable solutions to addressing the addiction crisis. With your support and the support of other communities across the state, I believe we can influence the governor to take action now. Each day we wait, numerous Oregonians die, and countless others continue to struggle with untreated drug and alcohol addiction. If people are able to get the help they need to get clean by greater access to treatment and by ongoing recovery support services, we will all benefit from this. Just as the ripple effects from active drug use affect the lives of so many, so too does the ripple effects of recovery. I stand here today as a community advocate, as the program director of Springfield Treatment Center, and as a steering committee member of Oregon Recovers, and as a person in recovery from chronic drug abuse, recovery from criminality, recovery from homelessness, recovery from unemployment, and recovery from being a detriment to society. Please stand with me in asking the governor to take action now to prioritize addressing the addiction crisis in this state. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Ball, followed by Nicholas Engel.
Good evening. I'm Jim Ball. I live in Councilor Taylor's ward. I'm working my way through the CAP 2 draft, and I have several concerns and ideas. I just have time to talk about one today, and that's the fact that our greenhouse gas reduction goal for 2030 is an absolute number. It's not a per capita number. If each person cuts their carbon emissions in half, but the population doubles, we haven't made any progress. That doesn't make sense to me. If people move to Eugene, the carbon emission rate has to go down in the city they moved away from. Why should people in Eugene have to pay for more carbon offsets simply because people are moving from one place to another? This could very easily lead to anti-immigrant, anti-growth attitudes. I'd rather live in a city that welcomes new people and accepts reasonable amounts of growth. According to CAP 2.0, with the actions currently planned, our expected emission reductions by 2030 are only 40% of our goal. This number is disappointing, partly due to the fact that population is expected to increase during the 2018 to 2030 period, which will add about 140,000 metric tons to the burden. Simply changing the CRO to a per capita goal would move us from 40% to 50%. That's much better for morale. If you don't make this change and we get a large influx of climate migration, which I think is very likely, our gap might be much larger than the currently forecast 60%, leading people to get discouraged and to give up. Please consider amending the CRO to set our emission reduction target based on how many people live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas Engel, followed by Sarah Mazie.
Good evening, folks. My name is Nicholas Engel. I'm homeless, and I'm in all your wards. So, Betty, I think I'm running for your seat, though, in Ward 2. I'd like to speak about a couple things that you were brought up in the last meeting. The tax issue on the safety initiative, yeah, that hits me right now as well, since I work for a business with 3 people. Our gross is over $150,000, 50% plus, which is just the basic cost of the retail items. And so you're actually going to be taxing me to push me further away from services I need downtown. Thank you all so much for that. And maybe I'll get lucky and lose my job entirely, since my owner may not be able to afford a 3rd employee then. The hiring frenzy that the police chief spoke about, if you look up the Mellon Commission and anything else under Googling hiring frenzy and police corruption, you'll find that's a distinct number one item in police department corruption scandals 5, 8, 10, 20 years down the road. New York, Miami, Chicago, New Orleans, you pick a place and a hiring frenzy and there's corruption. It's a horrible way to bring in people. Also, the police department, I think, that is hiring 8 people, that they only have places for 3 because they anticipate openings and buying vehicles for officers that don't exist, that we don't have, but we can't afford one functioning toilet in this town that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 180,000 people? Really, that's a wonderful use of resources. You know, it's incredible. Entire city department of parks and maintenance can't keep that job open. But for one day out of the week, they can't keep a toilet open for 24 hours. River Road, Parks and Rec, they power wash and sanitize the entire pool, sauna, 2 hot tubs, 7 bathrooms, 2 lounge rooms, 5 shower areas, and all the public areas included, not once a week, not once a day, every day of the week, every day of the week. 7 days, wow. And they do it on like a $1.50 mission. Boy, they sure know how to string a buck over there. Or maybe it's just who they hire. And taking the $100,000 plus a year time to start up a homeless facilitator position, but you can't bring in, you're bringing in police officers before you even have authorization. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sarah Mazie, followed by Rowan.
Mayor Vinnis and City Councilors, thank you so much for your time and your service. My name's Sarah Mazey. I'm in Ward 7. I'm here tonight to ask that you require staff to and provide support to have their back to staff in aligning their work with the Climate Action Plan, and specifically in fast-tracking, carrying out the aspects of the transportation system plan that improve bike and pedestrian infrastructure. As transportation is our second largest local source of emissions. Soon after I moved to town, I started using my bike for transportation like I had in other places, and it gradually became my main source of transportation. I was in my 20s, I was pretty fearless at that point, and then I had my daughter, and all of a sudden, I was terrified to bike places with my most precious cargo, and we would ride on the bike path near our house, but we were afraid to get off the bike path with her. And eventually we started veering off that little sliver of a safe network. But we realized, my husband and I realized, that we were exposing her to risk as we did so. And now my daughter's 9 and we bike downtown with her, but we don't do it, and she's on her own bike, but we only do it in daylight hours. And because we feel like it's too risky biking with her downtown in the dark. And we're the outliers in taking this risk. Even though we know that there is a huge risk of inactivity, and there is a even greater risk of climate change. So that's really devastating to her and her peers. So generally, we as people will make the choice to do what's easiest, what's fastest, what's safest. The option that doesn't really feel like a choice. The option that just feels like the obvious thing to do. And as a country and as a city, we have chosen to make driving that option. And we now need to make the explicit choice to make active and shared transportation the easy option that doesn't feel like a choice. So when taken one by one, the battles over what to do with each street are going to be painful. Are we going to remove parking or a lane of traffic to prioritize children, to prioritize people who can't afford to drive, people who have aged out of driving? Or are we going to prioritize storage of private vehicles for those people who do have the option to drive? Or are we going to prioritize choosing to avoid a few seconds of delay for those who are able to drive? And in the end, we can see from other countries that have made the choice to prioritize the health of their communities and our global climate and our future by prioritizing active transportation, that businesses thrive, mobility persists, and space can be reclaimed for people rather than our vehicles. So I'm asking you again to please require staff to align their priorities with that climate action plan.
Thank you. Rowan, followed by Darcy Martin.
I'm Rowan, and I'm in, I think I'm in Emily's ward, but I'm not sure. Friendly neighborhood?
Yep.
Okay, good. Intuition turned out to be correct. Now, I have an intuition on 5G, and I feel like I don't have, there's a gap between the intuition and being able to articulate it in a way that persuades people that haven't had the experiences that I've had. But I did want to register that I believe it's important, and I'm going to be back. I'm going to try to make a stronger case. I've been impressed by a number of the speakers who've been here on other issues, and I'm realizing that I need to step into that gap more and make a stronger case with evidence that might be more persuasive. But so I'll be back, but at least I wanted to put it on the record that I believe this is important and that lives are on the line. Kind of like lives were on the line with cigarettes, which was an invisible problem to most of us, and there was debate among scientists both ways, and many people died because of that issue. And I believe that if we don't act, if we don't take a lesson from that and act on this sooner, that things will be locked into place. There are a lot of vested interests. There's a lot of money to be made on 5G, and I'm concerned that the science that's been funded by those interests is skewing the debate. So I'm going to do what I can, because I do believe my life is on the line. I mentioned previously that my immune system's on the edge, and I don't have, in 2 minutes, I don't think I can make a persuasive case for
to you why I'm convinced that electromagnetics has a lot to do with it. I think I'm going to give my extra time to whoever needs it. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Darcy Martin, followed by Deanna Lynn.
Thank you, City Council. My name is Darcy Martin. I was born and raised in Ward 7, and I own properties there. I would like to speak on the epidemic of lawlessness and the lack of enforcement for the trespassing, panhandling, and illegal camping. This is affecting my business as a real estate broker and the reputation of Eugene. We are not holding people accountable, and those that continue to trash our streets, steal, and vandalize our businesses and homes know that they will not be prosecuted. Illegal camping is happening in front of our school sidewalks and playgrounds. Used hypodermic needles are laying in the grass and on the ground that our children walk through. Urine and feces are in our street gutters and our parks. We have more resources for those that need shelter than any city in Oregon. I have been told that those that are on the streets will not access these shelters because they are not low barrier, meaning allowing drugs and alcohol. Do we owe all of these people something? Are these people even residents of Oregon? And have they paid taxes like we have to? Dr. Drew Pinsky was recently quoted speaking of the epidemic on the Pacific Coast. This isn't a housing problem, he said. It is a mental health and addiction problem. Most of the street people are addicts and mentally ill. They need rehab and they need help. What about the huge newer mental health facility, the psychiatric hospital, I guess it is, in Junction City? Is it at full capacity? Can we access that to get these people off the streets? Please continue to work with Eugene Wake Up. Find solutions before it's too late and Eugene looks like Seattle or Portland or LA or San Francisco. In closing, I plead our tax-paying, hardworking citizens of Eugene to stand up, get involved, and to help our city council to pass laws that will be solutions to this epidemic. This is not a political issue. It's an issue for anyone that cares about our city. We are Middle America, and we need to stand up and be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Deanna Lynn, followed by Allison Grover.
My name is Deanna Lynn. I'm in Ward 2. I'm a grad student at the School of Architecture and Environment at the University of Oregon. I'm here with two student groups to support climate action. One student group is Designed for Climate Action. The other one is Climate Justice League. And we've had 14 students show up tonight to support climate action. And there's a lot of things that worry me about climate change. One of the things I think about a lot is that parts of the world where millions of people live will become unlivable if we don't act. It will be so hot that people die just being outside. And so that's millions of people are going to have to leave their countries. That's going to create a lot of political instability. So I'm very concerned about that. And science says that we have less than 10 years to act. And so it's really an urgent issue. I understand that there are a lot of urgent issues facing Eugene right now. I believe homelessness is very urgent also. But there are things that we can do that address both of these issues, such as housing people and creating a denser cities, and passing HB 2001 and allowing duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and single-family zoning is something that will create more housing stock, help more people get housed, and it will also help reduce our emissions. And so I urge you to take the most climate action that seems the most efficient, if that's approving this Climate Action Plan 2.0 and moving forward with that. I support that. I agree with other statements that there needs to be really clear actions and objectives that we know are going to reach our goal. We need those as soon as possible. But if approving the Climate Action Plan 2.0 as we have right now is the best way to move forward, I support that. But I think it makes more sense that the Climate Action 2.0 is like a project proposal, and we need a full plan. And so I think there's a lot of hope in doing this work in climate change. If we do this work to reduce our emissions through improving transportation, providing more housing for people, planting more trees, we can create a more healthy and beautiful city. And there's a lot of hope in working with nature, but we need to act now. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison Grover, followed by Aaron Wolverton.
Hi, my name's Allison. I'm also from the same student group as Deanna, Design for Climate Action at University of Oregon. I'm also in the College of Design, and I'm in Ward 2. So I want to echo what Deanna said about how sometimes we forget that climate change is unequally affecting vulnerable communities around the world, and it's based on our emissions specifically. So I want to talk about transportation. So I'm a bike commuter to school. It takes me about 12 minutes to get from South Eugene to University of Oregon. And I'm pretty dedicated because I don't want to pay for parking. But on the weekends, I drive to school because it's easier and it's more comfortable, and parking is free on the weekends. However, it's not that hard to bike. And I think for a lot of people, biking is something that in Eugene we do because it's relatively easy. And I want to encourage you to keep Eugene being a leader in walk and bikeability around the country. And some objectives that I think are important for Eugene to continue to focus on include concentrating development along main transport corridors, so passing HB 2001, supporting LTD's programs such as Moving Ahead and Transit Tomorrow, reducing barriers of access to transit, so focusing on equity. And I think it's an opportunity to address equity and take innovative actions while also meeting our climate goals. So personally, cars are expensive, insurance is expensive, parking is hard. So if you build easier ways to get around and make them comfortable, so biking, walking, and transit, people will populate it. So if you build it, we will come. I can't tell you how many people I know that became bike commuters when they moved to Oregon or when they moved to Eugene. It's a behavioral change that happens when things are easy. So yeah, again, this is an opportunity to make drastic moves and build infrastructure for our futures and not to reflect our current behaviors if we want to change, because we all have to reduce our footprints. Thanks.
Thank you. Aaron Wolverton, followed by Nigel Mosby.
Hi, good evening. My name is Aaron Wolverton, and I live in Ward number 1. I just want to take a moment to thank you for listening to all of us tonight. I am also in the Design for Climate Action group that Allison and Deanna were speaking about just now. And I come here today to represent that group, as well as the Climate Justice League from the University of Oregon, as well as the Landscape Architecture Department of the University of Oregon, in saying that we support the Eugene's Climate Action Plan. The Eugene's Climate Action Plan addresses key issues and concepts related to the growing global crisis of climate change. It offers an extensive list of actions related to transportation, consumption, energy use, equity, and much more. These principles align to concrete data, and many of them provide goals that speak to the issues brought up throughout tonight's meeting. And I would like to say that although the CAP 2.0 is in a step in the right direction, I'm also here to say that the CAP 2.0 is not enough. We should be considering these actions, yes. As discussed previously, however, the CAP 2.0 fails to address measurable objectives, as well as the requiring monitoring and benchmarks needed to keep us on track to a cleaner future. So although this CAP 2.0 may not realign us to a perfectly sustainable ideal future, it is definitely a step in the right direction, and one that may assist Eugene in evolving into a more sustainable community for the future. So as I mentioned, I'm in the Landscape Architecture Department right now at the University of Oregon, and I recently moved from the East Coast as an architect, and I guess just as an anecdote, I think I'm learning through this community the importance in ecological mindfulness. And I'd like to remind us all today that Eugene has had a history of being an ecological mindful place, especially when comparing it to other big cities on the East Coast. But I think it's important to be aware of places like Spencer's View, the Frank Kinney Park up on the Amazon Creek, and Frank Kinney Park, as well as the wetlands out west. This weekend I just went for a run out there. It was like really beautiful. But those places really give us the opportunity to explore what it means in terms of this world and climate justice, and the ways that we can kind of create new places and new opportunities to sequester carbon, as well as provide beautiful places for our communities. So thank you.
Thank you. Nigel Mosby, followed by Kwok Hing Tom. Yeah, just hand them to, there you go.
Ready. Hello, my name's Nigel Mosby. I live in the 7th Ward. With what you're looking at, as you're looking, I want to say, when I started my journey on trying to get a solution for the homeless problem going on out there, and I don't like that word, I like to use people on the streets with no home. I started with Chris Pryor's approach. When I asked the question, it was, what could make it better? And the answer was astonishing. I hear a lot of people on the streets with no homes say storage. A lot of people on the streets with no homes say bathrooms, a day room, because the mission closed at between 1 and 4 p.m. I also talked with a few business owners, and they say that the problem is it's all over behavior and attitude. That was what was mentioned, whether it was customer or employee. And then we get a group like Eugene Wake Up come and call them bad names like homeless and lawless. I could go on about how social discriminating that is, but I would like to say, wouldn't it be nice to be the first city to bring a solution to the housing crisis? Wouldn't it be nice to be the trendsetter Emerald City of compassion, not a city of homeless camps, putting people behind walls and out of sight, out of mind? But I have a wall that I could put them behind. A well and healthy living. And with what you're looking at, this is one house. These are beds. They have doors on them. These are beds. The blue is showers. The green is washers and dryers. The red is ovens. And the brown is storage. And if we can get more resource homes, it will solve the problem of people going out and having to use the bathroom at the river or having to do what they do. And my goal is to see if the city of Eugene will vet me with my A Well and Healthy Living nonprofit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Kwok Hing Tom, followed by Duncan Varisco.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tom. I had a problem since the LTD to divide my street on 7 on Monroe Street from the 2016. So I sent a letter to the mayor and councilor. Until today, there's no people give me the answer. So I wish I can solve the problem and how we use my property for the do something, because almost 7 years. So I will be happy to make an appointment with someone, sit down, because there's a whole bunch of paper we had to explain what the city doing for me, what the LTD doing to me. So I will be let my property reuse again for 7 on Monroe Street. I own almost acre property for the low-income housing and mental people before. Now it's turned down. I wish as soon as possible we can sit down and solve all the problem before we go to court. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Duncan Varisco.
Good evening. Excuse me. Hi, my name is Duncan. I'm from the River Road neighborhood. Not sure what ward that is. I'd like to thank the City Council for having me tonight. And I'm here to speak on the annexation of property on Willow Avenue, 830. This is the neighboring property to my new home that I bought a couple years ago. Really enjoyed the privacy that I had with this house. It's the biggest factor of purchasing it. This new house will take that all away. Not to mention, Caprice Way doesn't have a turnaround for a fire truck, and I don't believe that is at all safe. Those 5 houses on that next property, I believe, are way too close together, and this is just continuing that, what I'm trying to avoid. I've spoken with my neighbors. A couple of them are family members, and we all agree that that neighborhood or that specific road is at capacity, and to put a house back there would be unsafe. I lived in Santa Rosa for those fires a couple years ago, and yeah, it was pretty nerve-wracking. Something I think about as a homeowner now is how close houses are together. This new annexation of this property will take away all of the yard, and the properties will be within feet of each other, of each house. So that's really all I have to say on the matter, and thank you.
Thank you very much. And
I'd
that,
also like to thank everybody here on climate change. It's very important, and thank you very much.
thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for coming to testify. That closes that public testimony. Are there counselors who wish to comment on things they've heard? Counselor Semple, take it away.
As always, I appreciate everyone coming out to speak to us. I think this is a very important part of our job. Tonight, I want to give a shout out to the Osberg students who have been persistent in promoting this important decision. I'm inspired and grateful to them. And I just want to make sure you know that I think that, and that I am depending on you to continue supporting this message, because we're all dependent on you doing that. Thank you.
Any other comments from counselors? I'll just want to say a quick thing. I would be interested in following up with the Willamette River Keepers folks. I don't know if they're still here, but if they're here, and I want to thank the 350 people for coming out again and talking about CAP 2.0. It's helpful to hear your insights as always. And further conversations with Jarlberg about the churches who actually do a huge amount of work in the city, and we do count on them very much. So I think it's a conversation, but happy to talk about it more with you. Okay, I think that closes that part of this meeting, and we are on to our city council formal meeting. First piece is the consent calendar. Councilor Clark, I see you have a comment to make.
Can I pull item C, please?
Yes. Yes, so consent calendar minus C. Okay.
I move to approve the items on the consent calendar, except item C.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great, thank you very much. You want to just speak to item C, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to ask manager and council, Is there anything that is time-driven by item C, the annexation piece that was spoken to earlier by that gentleman?
I believe it is. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Althea Sullivan. I'm an assistant planner with the City of Eugene's Planning Division. My understanding of your question is there a deadline for making a decision?
Action.
There's options, I suppose. It's something where you could vote to defer action, which would, if that was the choice, then we would be looking at holding a meeting later because we have to provide a 30-day notice. But there's not necessarily a deadline for making a decision about this particular application.
Is this application private or is it the city's act?
It's a private application.
And it's about development of a particular property?
That's correct.
It's an annexation in conjunction with the development of a particular property?
At this point, the application is just to annex the property.
Okay.
I don't know the future plans of it.
Well, that's my question with regard to the work that's being done on River Road in Santa Clara and the issues of density that we're starting to hear now. And with more and more of this as it comes, I want to understand better right from the start how we deal with their planning, with their refinement plan work and issues of people annexing in, and make sure we're dealing with this in a uniform way. And I'm just undereducated about it. That's why I wanted to ask, is there something that we have to move on this right now? If not, I'd like to postpone it just enough to learn more about our issues involved with this. So I'll make that motion, I suppose, to table this particular item.
I think Councilor Surratt wants to speak first. Before you do that, if we
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Clark, for pulling this. I think it's worth discussing. We rarely get folks who come down and speak to us about the annexations that are being proposed, so I think it's important that we respond. I do note in our council options, we do have the option to have a public hearing on the proposed annexation, so I don't know if that would be in order. We've heard from one member of the community who's abuts the property. There might be others who want to speak. The person who wants the annexation might wish to speak. So that would probably be the direction I would recommend in terms of how to get additional information and give this a full vetting. If I could ask the question, it's not clear from the map we have how this property will be accessed. What street will they use to access the actual property that's being proposed for annexation?
So I'm looking to try and figure out which page, but there is a maintenance. Are you looking at the?
I'm looking at the Google map that's been provided.
So there is a maintenance access easement that would run from Willow Avenue.
Willow. So it wouldn't use Caprice Way as a street.
I mean, I suppose someone could drive along Caprice Way, but it wouldn't be the primary access. There is an easement through the adjacent property.
Okay. So that's all I needed to say right now.
I did make the motion, but it didn't get a second, and I would easily take the friendly, so.
Sorry, I didn't.
What's that?
didn't make the motion. I
We didn't hear you make a motion.
Councilor Surratt spoke. Yeah, we didn't hear even hear the motion. Now you can make
Right?
Yeah.
To move to send this to a public hearing.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, there we go. Move to public hearing. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Okay, next item up, ordinance concerning restrictions on the use of polystyrene. Manager, do you need to speak to that in any way?
Sure, I can just remind the public that might be watching that you held a public hearing on this ordinance just a couple weeks ago on November 18th. So tonight is just taking action on the ordinance that you've already had the hearing on.
Okay. Ready? I move to adopt an ordinance concerning restrictions on the use of polystyrene containers and adding sections 6.874 6.876, and 6.878 to the Eugene Code 1971.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Excellent, that passes. Okay, next item, an ordinance concerning single-use checkout bags. Do we need? Similarly.
Yep, held a public hearing on this also on November 18th.
Okay. Councilor Taylor?
I move to adopt an ordinance concerning single-use checkout bags, amending sections 6.850 and 6.855 of the Eugene Code 1971, and repealing section 6.860 and 6.865 of the code.
Second.
Discussion? Councilor Zelenka and Councilor Clark.
So just to be clear, this puts us in compliance with state law. And what it does is include restaurants from using plastic bags. Still does not prohibit the use of bulk item plastic bags for fruit, vegetables, nuts, or hardware items, or wrapping containing food, meat, fish, flowers, potted plants, or newspaper bags, or door hangers, or garment bags, or laundry bags, or dry cleaning bags. So it's still not as some people say, a bag ban. It's only a partial. So it does put us in compliance with state law, and I support it, though.
Councilor Clark.
Pass.
Okay. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you very much. That passes. All right. Number 5, action, a resolution calling for statewide addiction recovery continuum of care. Councilor Ye, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank Terry Morgan. I think she did an excellent job of saying all the things that needed to be said. But I did want to highlight one of the important facts that we discussed this afternoon at our first meeting, but Terry also mentioned it, that we are the 4th highest rate of substance use disorder in the country, yet we are the 50th in access to addiction treatment. And I don't think that can be emphasized enough, the deep hole that we have found ourselves in that we really need to find ways to get ourselves out of. And one of the things Terry didn't share that I will is that 2/3 of Oregonians have a friend or family member who suffers from an addiction. So it's something that most of us is personal, that someone we know is, or us ourselves are dealing with. This doesn't have a number. Do I need a number? Okay. So do I just make a motion?
Yes, you can.
So I would like to make a motion to create the resolution calling for a statewide addiction recovery continuum of care.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that passes. That's excellent. And I want to thank Councilor Ye for bringing that forward, and thank you, Terry, for your testimony and for advocating for this, which is, I think, critically important. So thank you very much for your work. And with that, we are adjourned.